25 creepy children's movies, 7 levels. From cute rabbits getting absolutely massacred to a literal abductor in a whimsical musical, these are 25 of the darkest and creepiest moments from beloved children's movies. The deeper we go, the more sinister and horrific the scenes. Let's start at the tip of the iceberg. Disclaimer. Level 1. The Addams Family, 1991. In 1991, the Addams Family finally came to the screen in all of their macabre glory. From the first scene, director Barry Sonnenfeld's debut film introduces us to a family that finds joy in the grotesque, pain in pleasure, and beauty in darkness. But the real fun stuff comes at the end of the movie. In what should be a wholesome elementary school production, Wednesday and Pugsley transform a sanitized rendition of Shakespeare into a blood-soaked spectacle. Before their big show, Uncle Fester helps the children prepare by rigging elaborate prosthetics and hidden tubes to create the most realistic carnage possible. He's very, very successful. Wednesday, stone-faced and methodical as ever, delivers her lines with deadpan precision before violently stabbing her brother. Pugsley, ever the willing victim, collapses dramatically as blood spurts from his prosthetic arm that thuds to the ground. The horrified faces of parents and teachers contrast perfectly with the Addams family's enthusiastic approval. And of course, blood just pours out. But the blood doesn't stay confined to the stage. Wednesday, her neck pouring with fake blood, turns towards the audience and sprays the front row with it. The other parents recoil in disgust while Gomez and Morticia beam with pride at their children's commitment to theatrical realism. It's a very, very Addams Family moment. In fact, this scene perfectly encapsulates what makes the film so subversive as a kids' movie. The Addams clan doesn't understand why anyone would be disturbed by their behavior because it's just fun. To them, dismemberment and bloodshed are simply Tuesday afternoon activities, and they should be fun. How many kids' movies have that kind of an approach to blood? The Nightmare Before Christmas, 1993. The Nightmare Before Christmas may present itself as a children's film, but when you really look at it, the movie contains some intensely disturbing imagery that would usually make most parents reconsider.
This is Halloween, this is Halloween, Halloween.
From the very first scene, we're introduced to Halloween Town's macabre residents who revel in terror, including a clown with a tearaway face revealing an endless void. So in case you haven't noticed, these aren't your typical colorful, child-friendly cartoon characters. Tim Burton produced the movie, and his distinct gothic aesthetic permeates every frame to create that unusually dark, creepy environment that is nothing like what Disney was putting out back in 1993. And the fact that it's stop motion adds an even more uncanny quality to it, as if they're jerky puppets brought unnaturally to life. Even the most joyful scenes feel slightly wrong.
Sandy Claus.
But then there are moments that are even darker than anyone could expect. One of the songs, Kidnap the Sandy Claus, features 3 childlike characters, Lock, Shock, and Barrel, gleefully plotting Santa's abduction. And
Trick or treat!
the lyrics are pretty clear about boiling him alive, for one example. This cavalier attitude towards violence is presented as childish mischief, yet the song details various methods with cheerful melodies. It's pretty surprising Disney put its name on this.
And now, with your permission, I'm going to do my stuff.
The movie goes even further, with Dr. Finkelstein casually plucking out half his brain to create a companion, while the Halloween Town residents transform Christmas gifts into horrifying abominations, with shrunken heads, wreaths, and predatory toys unleashed upon unsuspecting human children. Then we come to the film's villain, Oogie Boogie. He's already pretty creepy and intense, but when finally defeated, his burlap exterior tears away, revealing he's merely a writhing collection of insects and spiders.
Now look what you've done!
As his body disintegrates, his voice breaks down into multiplying high-pitched screams until only one tiny bug remains. When it was first released in 1993, the movie was strongly marketed to families. Despite containing freshly dead animals as gifts, skeletal figures terrorizing children, and psychological horror elements. You can imagine their shock when they got into the movie theater. Coraline, 2009. The opening scene of Coraline sets the tone for the movie immediately. A doll floats through a window into needle hands that methodically gut it, turning it inside out, replacing its eyes with buttons and transforming it into something new. That alone is a bold and dark beginning for a children's movie, but this isn't just a doll, it's bait. The doll appears in Coraline's life mysteriously, looking exactly like her doll down to her yellow raincoat.
Good night, little me.
It watches her, gathers information for the beldam, the creature Coraline will come to know as the Other Mother. Through a small door covered by wallpaper, a tunnel leads to the other world where everything seems perfect. Too perfect. Because the Other Mother's true nature lurks beneath her button-eyed facade. She cooks delicious meals, creates magical entertainment, and offers Coraline everything her real parents don't. But there's a price. Just some buttons sewn over her eyes. A simple transaction, but a sinister one.
No way! You're not sewing buttons in my eyes!
The horror intensifies when Coraline encounters 3 ghost children trapped behind a mirror. They tell her that the Other Mother spied on their lives through the little doll's eyes, and when she discovered the children weren't happy, she lured them away with treasures and treats. They allowed the beldam to sew buttons over their eyes. Then came the darkest reveal of all.
She locked us here and ate up our lives.
The whole tone of Coraline is creepy enough, but this reveal that the Other Mother is basically consuming these children is insanely dark. When Coraline rejects the button eyes, the Other Mother's humanity drops away. Her body elongates, her fingers stretch into needles, and her true spider-like form emerges. She's a predator who has been patiently laying her webs, a hunter who has used this technique for generations, collecting children's souls like specimens. In a movie that's already built to explore very dark themes, it's another level of brutal. Level 2. The Witches, 1990. Nicholas Roeg's 1990 adaptation of Roald Dahl's The Witches remains one of the most traumatizing children's films ever made. Despite its PG rating, the film employed the visual language of horror cinema that Roeg had mastered. Handheld cameras, extreme close-ups, and unsettling Dutch angles totally transformed what could have been a simple fantasy into nightmare fuel for an entire generation of children. The witches themselves are introduced as seemingly normal women who secretly loathe children, openly saying they think kids smell like dog droppings. But it's the Grand High Witch, played with an unhinged venomous intensity by Angelica Houston, who delivers the film's most unforgettable horror moment. During a convention of English witches disguised as a meeting of the Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children, Houston's character commands the assembled witches to remove their wigs, revealing their bald, scabbed heads. Then comes the scene that scarred an entire generation. The Grand High Witch slowly unhooks something behind her ears and peels her entire face away. The prosthetic took 6 hours to apply and another 6 to remove. What's revealed beneath is genuinely horrific, even today. She has a shrunken, decayed face with a pointed beak, hairy chin, and exposed clavicle. As described in Dahl's book, her face appeared crumpled and wizened, so shrunken and shriveled, rotting away at the edges. Roeg wanted to go as far as he possibly could, convincing Jim Henson's Creature Shop to push practical effects to their limit, creating something so disturbing that even Dahl himself complained about the vulgarity and actual terror displayed on screen. The film bombed commercially, possibly because of its intensity, but it gained cult status, remembered particularly for how it didn't shy away from showing children genuine horror. Rogue and Henson fully explored their macabre sensibilities, creating images that lodge permanently in viewers' psyches, even in adulthood. Watership Down, 1978. When it first released in 1978, Watership Down traumatized an entire generation of children, and that is no understatement. So many parents went out to rent what looked like a cute animated film about rabbits hanging out and being cute, only to put it on and unwittingly expose their kids to one of the most disturbing animated features ever created. In the UK, the film carries a U rating, meaning it's suitable for all ages, yet it still, to this day, is one of the most controversial U's in history, with many people arguing that it should never have been a U. The film opens with Fiver's terrifying vision. This small, psychic rabbit suddenly freezes, his eyes widening as he stares across a peaceful field. The field is covered with blood, he whispers, trembling. Suddenly, everything changes.
The field, it's covered with blood.
Blood? Don't be silly.
The animation style shifts dramatically as the screen fills with this intense, pulsing red glow. Fiver's voice becomes increasingly desperate. It's all around us. We've got to go away from here, all of us. Literally one scene into the movie and we're already facing some kind of horrifying vision. Good parenting, guys! This vision comes true, of course. There's a residential development coming to their home. If they stay, these rabbits will be buried alive in some horrific mass genocide. All they can do is to make their way to a safer area, Watership Down. But almost as soon as they leave, one of them is brutally killed by a hawk. That is just one moment. What follows is a literal parade of horrors. Rabbits caught in snares choke slowly on screen. General Woundwort rips out another rabbit's throat, leaving a bloody corpse in full view. Dogs maul rabbits graphically. It's just one thing after another. Pretty obvious why so many kids were seriously traumatized after watching it, right? For a long time in the UK, teachers would show this film to third graders, many of whom were said to be unable to sleep for days afterward. Parents complained for decades about the inappropriate rating, yet the film remained classified as suitable for all until 2022, when it was finally re-rated PG after 44 years. And even that feels a little too generous. Of course, not all generosity is bad. For example, subscribing helps us make more great videos like this one. Level 3. Ernest Scared Stupid, 1991. The Ernest movies are American classics. They're pretty bad, of course, in a good way, but Ernest Scared Stupid in particular presents some disturbing elements through a modern lens. At best, creepy as hell. The film's premise centers on Ernest, a garbage man who spends his free time with children Kenny, Elizabeth, and Joey. That's a thread we don't really want to pull on, I guess. When bullies destroy the kid's cardboard haunted house, Ernest eagerly suggests building a treehouse together.
I know what we need is a treehouse.
Naturally, he invites these young children to come with him to a remote wooded area to build a house they can all hang out in.
What's the big idea? A tree is a tree.
We've got to find one big enough to keep the Ottomans out. This is neat.
Honestly, the red flags are so glaring you could see them from space. The treehouse construction scene grows increasingly unfortunate as Ernest enthusiastically hammers away while children climb around him. He's disturbingly excited about being around these children. But Old Lady Hackmore's sudden arrival interrupts the already uncomfortable dynamic to start randomly warning about evil lurking below.
What have you done to the tree? You will open the ancient door, and all that lurks inside. Flee this evil place! Flee!
Now, she's not wrong. Beyond all of the questionable adult-child interactions, the film's creatures are genuinely weird. The Chiodo brothers, who were known for adult horror like killer clowns from outer space, designed Trantor with unsettling realism that's pretty bold for a kids' movie. Although some troll designs were literally repurposed killer clown masks with minimal alterations, so he apparently was just really proud of his own work. Most traumatizing is the bedroom scene, where a young girl discovers Trantor lying beside her in bed after checking underneath for monsters. This jump scare moment scared countless children, probably causing a lot of nightmares and bed-checking rituals. Although honestly, Ernest should also have that effect. The troll steals children, turning them into wooden dolls to absorb their energy, which apparently was so intense that parents reported children crying for hours and sleeping in their parents' beds for weeks after viewing what was marketed as comedy entertainment for kids. Ernest only released one more theatrical movie before he was confined to a life of direct-to-DVD adventures. Little Monsters, 1989. Little Monsters presents itself as a fun children's fantasy film where Fred Savage plays Brian, a kid who discovers Maurice, a blue monster under his bed. Their adventure together starts as playful mischief, then it descends into something genuinely disturbing. Maurice introduces Brian to a world where monsters emerge nightly to play pranks on sleeping children. They replace apple juice with pee, scare babies, and cause general chaos. Honestly, it's pretty fun. Kids watching might laugh at this. What happens next? Maybe not. The monster world operates under sinister leadership. Boy, dressed like an oversized schoolboy, rules with his enforcer Snick.
Never, ever, ever forget that!
Now, these aren't friendly creatures, they're legitimately terrifying, and they're capable of some horrific things. There's a moment where Snick confronts a smaller monster who's failed at a task. This creature still has a childlike head, pleading for mercy and kindness, but Snick is unmoved. He jabs his fingers into the monster's eye, then violently rips the head clean off, tossing it onto a blanket like garbage. He casually replaces it with a doll's head, as if this brutality is completely normal. Movies in the 1980s were very violent, obviously, but this decapitation scene appears in a PG-rated film marketed to children. Siskel and Ebert, the two biggest movie critics of the late 20th century, were horrified by what they saw in the movie theater, calling it unwholesome and deeply troubled. Basically, not for kids.
Little Monsters is one of the most repellent, distasteful, truly creepy movies I've seen in a long time.
Most of the grown-ups who saw this movie as children have often recalled it as one of the scariest movies of their youth, which honestly is probably one of the nicer things to say about it. Pinocchio, 1940. Disney's Pinocchio might seem like a strange one to put on the list, but there's a scene that makes it very, very worthy of its place. And it's all thanks to Pleasure Island and its proprietor, the Coachman. The Coachman first appears in a dimly lit tavern offering money to Honest John and Gideon for collecting naughty boys.
How would you blokes like to make some real money? I'm collecting stupid little boys, and I takes them to Pleasure Island.
When questioned about consequences, his face transforms into a demonic grimace as he hisses, "They'd never come back as boys." We know from that moment something is very wrong with this guy. As for Pleasure Island, it seems like an amusement park where children indulge in forbidden temptations, smoking cigars, drinking beer, fighting, and destruction.
Pleasure Island?
Yes, that happy land of carefree boys, where every day's a holiday.
But the Coachman locks the gates, remarking ominously that given enough rope, a boy will make a jackass of himself. Soon the island empties mysteriously. In the most nightmarish sequence of the entire movie, Pinocchio watches his friend Lampwick transform. First comes a donkey's tail, then his hands morph into hooves while he desperately screams for his mom.
Help! Help! Somebody help! Call that needle! Call anybody! Mama!
His human speech deteriorates into braying as his face stretches horrifically into a donkey's muzzle, his shadow on the wall displaying the full transformation. Meanwhile, the coach's minions, shadowy figures with glowing eyes, round up the transformed children. Those who can still speak are sorted as defective. We witness donkey boys beaten, crated, and sold to work in salt mines. It's horrific. The carriage that originally brought the boys to the island was pulled by 8 donkeys, former children from previous operations. The coachman's enterprise continues undetected, with countless children trafficked into animal slavery. Disney never softens this horror or offers redemption for the transformed boys. They remain donkeys forever, their humanity permanently stripped away. But hey, Pinocchio has a happy ending, so that's good, I guess. The Secret of Nim, 1982. The Secret of Nim seems innocent enough. Talking animals, sure. But look closer, and you'll see that it showcases intelligent rats plotting cold-blooded murder with calculated precision.
I agree. He's right. We'll be killed. Not if we got them first.
Jenner, a charismatic but sinister rat, manipulates his reluctant accomplice, Sullivan, into a scheme to kill their leader, Nicodemus, so they can take over. All they have to do is sabotage equipment during a delicate operation to move the Brisby family home. You see, these animals are being injected with experimental drugs that boost their intelligence. So these aren't just cute critters, they're complex beings capable of reading, understanding electricity, and wielding swords with deadly skill. Also, and when the plot unfolds, the violence escalates with pretty shocking brutality. Jenner slashes Sullivan with his sword in a betrayal that leaves blood visible on screen. When they finally come to their duel, Justin and Jenner engage in aggressive swordplay that ends with Sullivan throwing a dagger directly into Jenner's back. In fact, blood is everywhere in the movie. There's 8 instances where blood appears on screen. Characters die right in front of us. Food gets dragged. There are jump scares. There's even a moment where the great owl devours prey while intimidating the protagonist. It's surprisingly dark for such a cute-looking movie. Eventually, the Brisby home collapses with children trapped inside, creating an even more intense series of stakes. There's absolutely no effort made to try and shelter young viewers from the drama. It's bloody, it's muddy, it's pretty horrific. The Garbage Pail Kids movie, 1987. When the Garbage Pail Kids came onto the scene in the 1980s, they were instantly controversial for how disgusting and kind of off-putting they were. But they still got a movie. Fortunately, the filmmakers decided to not sanitize anything. So here we have 7 mutant children oozing green sludge emerging from a magical trash can to terrorize a 14-year-old boy and his world.
What are you?
Same to you, buddy.
Their designs are all disgusting, looking like taxidermy experiments gone wrong, with actors suffocating inside latex masks that limited breathing to 7-minute intervals during shooting. And in case you don't know, the film's heroes include a snot-spewing girl, a boy who urinates uncontrollably, and a crocodile child casually snacking on a lunchbox of severed human fingers. Typical Hollywood hero stuff, right? The movie from there really just becomes a bunch of random scenes of some of the most horrific stuff ever committed to film. Bullies in their 20s stalk the teenage protagonist Dodger, drowning him in sewage and leaving him to die in a scene framed as slapstick. When the Garbage Pail Kids rescue him, their idea of friendship involves vomiting on strangers, stealing food from elderly moviegoers, and unleashing a geyser of mucus popcorn hybrid onto a screaming crowd. Easy to see why they were so hated by the American public. By the end of the movie, we see these so-called kids ripping dresses off of models at a fashion show, exposing their undergarments while Dodger cheers. So you can add good old-fashioned to the mix. Also, just for the record, the Garbage Pail Kids themselves lack any redeeming traits, not a single one. They bully innocents, destroy property, and use their bodily fluids for evil, yet the narrative frames their cruelty as justified rebellion or some kind of quirky trait. By the end, their victory involves traumatizing bystanders and escaping consequences, leaving a lingering question: who the hell thought this was a good idea to show to children? Level 4. 9, 2009. Shane Acker's 9 takes place in a post-apocalyptic world where machines have wiped out humanity. I'll let you make the comparisons to our modern world. The film's disturbing aesthetic combines ragdoll characters with mechanical monsters in a bleak, ash-covered landscape. But while it was marketed as a child-friendly animation, 9 ventures into genuine horror territory with its horrifying creature designs. Nothing exemplifies this better than The Seamstress, the film's most terrifying creation. This serpentine hunter emerges after the main characters find temporary refuge in an abandoned library. In fact, the fabrication machine specifically designed this nightmare to prey on the emotional connections between the Stitch Punks. What makes The Seamstress truly disturbing is its use of 2's lifeless body as bait. After 2 is killed earlier in the film, his corpse becomes a puppet attached to the seamstress's tail. The monster manipulates his dead form to lure the others to their deaths, flashing its hypnotic light through 2's empty eye sockets, creating an eerie beacon in the darkness that they have to follow to their inevitable fate. There's no real soundtrack in these scenes, just the mechanical clinking and whirring of the seamstress as it moves. When it captures 8, that's when we see the monster's true nature. You see, this thing doesn't just kill, it literally sews its victims into its own body with needle and thread. The captured Stitch Punks hang limply within its fabric prison, visible but helpless. This is their fate. They have no choice but to accept it. In a way, the seamstress represents the film's central horror, the corruption of human creativity into something monstrous. It's a mechanical taxidermy in motion, a puppet master using the dead to capture the living. Let's try not to see any comparisons to, our current AI-enhanced world. The Last Unicorn, 1982. Parents who casually rented a 1982 animated feature named The Last Unicorn probably expected some generic family-friendly story about a unicorn who has to go on an adventure of some kind. Well, they did get that, but they also got a lot of imagery that was not to be expected in a movie like this. While our hero goes about her journey, we discover the true antagonist of the movie, the Red Bull. He emerges without warning, no music cue, no dramatic buildup, just a sudden, overwhelming presence. His massive form appears as a living flame, a burning entity with no discernible features beyond his hulking bull shape. He doesn't speak. He doesn't need to, honestly. Look at his first appearance. The unicorn sleeps peacefully when the ground begins to rumble. The bull materializes from nowhere, a swirling crimson forest that can crack the earth and rip the sky asunder. His snorting breath freezes everything it touches. Already, it's a lot more intense than anything Disney was doing at the time. What follows isn't just a chase, but pure primal terror. The bull pursues relentlessly, driving the unicorn toward the sea where he's forced all other unicorns before her. His movements are unnaturally fluid, turning in spaces way too small for his massive form. He can stop between strides without momentum, defying physics. It's like he's from some other existence. Children watching are forced to recognize something genuinely disturbing. An immortal creature of beauty and purity reduced to blind panic. The sound design amplifies this. The bull's bellowing drowns out everything else. Schmendrick saves her only by transforming her into human form, Lady Amalthea, a fate presented as worse than death for an immortal creature. So let's get this straight. To save her, he has to basically kill her. And we know it because she screams in pain when it happens. For a G-rated film marketed to children, these scenes are pure nightmare fuel with no way out. Lemony Snicket's A Series of Unfortunate Events, 2004. Lemony Snicket's A Series of Unfortunate Events stands apart from typical children's cinema thanks to its gothic aesthetic and, well, deeply unsettling themes.
The movie you are about to see is extremely unpleasant. My name is Lemony Snicket, and it is my sad duty to document this tale.
But the thing we're going to highlight is that this movie ventures into territory most family movies carefully avoid, including an adult man attempting to legally marry a 14-year-old girl. You see, Count Olaf doesn't simply want the Baudelaire fortune, he devises a plan to legally obtain it through forcing the eldest orphan, Violet, into marriage.
Yes, once you say I do and sign the marriage certificate, you'll really be my loverly bride.
But what makes this particularly creepy is Olaf's position as their legal guardian, creating a power dynamic that's profoundly uncomfortable to witness on screen. The wedding itself is cleverly disguised as the Marvelous Marriage Play. Olaf employs actual legal elements, a real judge, authentic marriage documents, and legally binding vows, while the audience believes they're watching a play. Meanwhile, infant Sunny dangles precariously in a birdcage from the tower window, ensuring Violet's compliance through direct threat to her sister's life. She has to go through with this, or it will end badly.
If you don't say I do, I say one word into this, and down will come baby, cradle and all.
We can't even say that this whole marriage thing is just a ploy because throughout the film, Olaf makes unsettling comments about Violet's appearance, even saying that she's so pretty he wouldn't dispose of her after the wedding like her siblings. He's a creep. And yet, all of the adults around Violet repeatedly fail her. No one listens when she tries to explain the situation.
No, Justice Strauss, you don't understand. The play is real.
Justice Strauss unwittingly facilitates what would essentially be a legally sanctioned abduction. Even Mr. Poe, their banker and supposed protector, remains oblivious until it's nearly too late. And even then, he's largely unhelpful. The Brave Little Toaster, 1987. The Brave Little Toaster is a classic in the animation medium. It also features some of the most psychologically troubling scenes in any cartoon. Early in the film, the air conditioner literally explodes in rage, his face contorting as he short-circuits. We, as the viewers, don't know it yet, but this is basically the tone that will follow. Later on in the movie, we get Toaster's nightmare sequence featuring a random demonic clown deliberately trying to murder him by dropping him into a bathtub while plugged in, complete with maniacal laughter as Toaster weakens. There's no real logic to it, it just happens. But all of this is small fries compared to the junkyard scene. It all unfolds as cars sing a haunting but weirdly upbeat jazzy melody about their worthlessness while being magnetically dragged to their deaths. The magnet, this massive sentient crane with narrow angry eyes, hunts them methodically like an executioner. You see, the magnet doesn't simply collect junk. It understands that its victims are alive and pursues them relentlessly, almost for the thrill of it. This thing scans the yard, pinpointing escapees with cold precision. One car even commits by driving voluntarily onto the conveyor belt, preferring to go out on his own terms. That's bleak. When the appliances fall into the magnet's grasp, they're lifted helplessly toward their doom. The magnet's blank, calculating stare suggests it knows exactly what it's doing, eliminating technology that's outlived its usefulness. Essentially, the film forces children to confront mortality through these machines. The magnet represents the ultimate end we all face, how death is impartial, unstoppable, and always watching. In a way, that's the film's darkest truth. Even sentient beings become trash when no longer useful. Now, is that the kind of message you want to hear as a 4-year-old? Probably not. Level 5. The Polar Express, 2004. Every Christmas, millions of people around the world settle in for a trip on the Polar Express and instantly remember just how creepy this movie truly is. From literally the first frame, the film's animation plunges viewers straight into an uncanny valley. These almost human characters with dead eyes and stiff movements are not at all convincing, and they're actually just unsettling to look at. But nothing embodies this creepiness more than the mysterious hobo character. There's a moment in the movie where our protagonist heads up to the top of the speeding train and happens to encounter this weird, ghostly figure who starts asking all these existential questions about belief while brewing coffee on a makeshift fire. There's no logic to it, or the movie generally.
What exactly is your persuasion on the big man, since you brought him up?
But his face shifts unnaturally as he transforms into an Ebenezer Scrooge puppet during the infamous marionette car scene, which is easily the most terrifying sequence in what's supposedly a children's film.
A Scrooge!
But then, the hobo vanishes into thin air multiple times, dissolving into snow before the boy's eyes as though he was never real. Now, a deleted scene confirms that yes, he's actually a ghost who died while riding atop the train, now eternally haunting it. But his cryptic claim of being the king of the North Pole is just weird and creepy. Now, it's worth mentioning that the hobo, like all of the adult characters, is played by Tom Hanks. So there's a weird continuity in this universe, as though the entire experience might be happening in someone's dying mind, but that's a theory for another day.
Thank you.
Right now, we're just left with the question, who thought this would comfort children on Christmas Eve? Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, 1971. From the moment Gene Wilder's Wonka limps toward his guests only to somersault unexpectedly, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory gives the audience a very important clue that we totally ignore. This man cannot be trusted. Obviously, the factory itself operates as an elaborate trap for children. It's not a coincidence. Ever notice how each transportation mode shrinks to perfectly accommodate the diminishing tour group? The Wonkatania has exactly 8 seats after Augustus disappears, almost as if Wonka anticipated his death. Or disappearance, or whatever.
Please, I beg you, Augustus! My chocolates!
The children aren't just failing his tests or accidentally taking themselves out, they're being systematically eliminated through traps. Now, that's already very, very messed up. But then comes the nightmarish boat ride. The cheerful atmosphere quickly vanishes as the Wonkatania enters a dark tunnel and psychedelic colors splash across the walls. Disturbing images rapidly flash of millipedes crawling across human faces, a chicken being decapitated, slithering snakes. It's honestly insane. The passengers grow nauseated while Wonka, staring unblinkingly ahead, recites a poem with increasing mania, as though he's somehow slipping into some kind of unresolved trauma or wartime PTSD.
And they're certainly not showing any signs!
And then suddenly, the whole thing is over, as though nothing happened at all. No explanation, no recognition, on to the next thing. The movie was made in 1971, right around the time of horror's creative renaissance, and this scene has a lot of horror DNA in it. This boat scene particularly feels unsafe, grungy, tactile, and totally out of place in the movie. But that's exactly why it's so memorable. The movie just wants to show you that this guy is psychologically unhinged, and yet we still choose to see him as a little quirky. Pee-wee's Big Adventure, 1985. Tim Burton's 1985 directorial debut, Pee-wee's Big Adventure, was a highly unusual movie for him, when you think about it. It's extremely colorful, saturated with an almost entirely human cast, and a pretty grounded goal. But he still had fun. The film's most notorious moment arrives when Pee-wee hitches a ride with truck driver Large Marge. As she recounts, "The worst accident I ever seen," her face transforms into a grotesque, bug-eyed monster with bulging eyes and rotting teeth. So yeah, that's the Tim Burton we know and love. The sequence is completely random and out of place, of course. Then Pee-wee learns Large Marge died in that very accident 10 years earlier, which means he was riding with a ghost.
It was 10 years ago. Worst accident I ever seen.
That means the Large Marge I was riding with was...
Even though the whole movie is light and colorful, Burton cannot resist these weird German expressionist gothic tones. Bear in mind that by this point, he had already been fired from Disney for making content too dark for children. So when he got the chance to make this PG-rated debut, he really went all out with unsettling imagery that hides in plain sight.
Is it fair to say that making Pee-wee's Big Adventure was about as happy and this is the first time?
It was a good first film for me because I got to play around with different sort of subgenres.
It turns out that's exactly what he had to do to build a solid career as a director. Who Framed Roger Rabbit, 1988. Who Framed Roger Rabbit is often remembered as a groundbreaking blend of animation and live action, which it obviously is. But it's also a movie about racism, using its 1947 Los Angeles setting to depict a world where cartoon characters coexist with humans while facing systematic discrimination. The film's villain, Judge Doom, is established as a credible threat early on into the movie. Dressed in black with an expressionless face, the human Doom demonstrates his invention, the dip, a mixture of turpentine, acetone, and benzene that permanently kills toons.
Remember how we always thought there wasn't a way to kill a toon? Well, Doom found a way. He calls it the dip.
In one of family cinema's most disturbing scenes, he slowly lowers a frightened animated shoe into the chemical bath, forcing audiences to watch as it squeaks in terror before dissolving into nothingness. The death of imagination right in front of us. The third act of the movie sees Doom finally getting his justice. After being flattened by a steamroller, Doom doesn't die as expected. Instead, his flattened body inflates back to 3 dimensions, revealing his toon nature. His eyes become animated daggers and his voice transforms into a maniacal, high-pitched screech. That's the big twist. Doom is actually a toon himself who concealed his identity while pursuing a plan to destroy Toontown and build a freeway. This self-loathing villain killed Detective Eddie Valiant's brother years earlier, establishing a noir-inspired plot of corruption and revenge, and giving Eddie a reason to hold a prejudice against toons.
Toon killed my brother. Dropped the piano on us from 15 stories. Said he never made it.
So Doom isn't just killing toons, he's committing against his own kind, for absolutely no good reason whatsoever. But, as that classic movie says, forget it, man. It's Toontown. Beetlejuice, 1988. Tim Burton's Beetlejuice was really the movie that established him as a visionary genius. Honestly, it's hard to pick out just 1 or 2 moments that are creepy, but since we have to choose, the Netherworld waiting room scene exposes children to death in its most graphic forms.
Is this what happens when you die?
This is what happens when you die. That is what happens when he dies. And that is what happens when they die. It's all very personal.
This highly creative scene shows spirits sitting quietly reading magazines, their bodies permanently displaying their manner of death. Ms. Argentina, a beauty queen, flashes her slit wrists while cheerfully directing new arrivals. A magician's assistant remains eternally bisected, her legs sitting separately on the couch cushion. All of it is played for laughs and not taken seriously at all. Oh, and there's a lot more. There's the hunter whose head was shrunken, a diver with a shark still attached to his leg, and a completely flattened messenger with tire tracks across his body. A smoking charman, burned to a crisp, casually offers Adam a cigarette. Most unsettling is Juno, their caseworker, who blows cigarette smoke through the gash in her throat. Burton's visual way of explaining she died by suicide.
You want a cigarette?
Oh, no, thank you.
I'm trying to cut down myself.
And yet the scene doesn't really seem concerned by any of this. Actually, the movie is basically showing that the bureaucracy of death is somehow more terrifying than death itself. Having to wait is the horror, not dying. But just to balance it out with one more scene, we have to highlight the moment when Beetlejuice reveals his true nature. After appearing charming but mischievous, his demonic side emerges when he transforms the stair railing into a massive snake with his own leering face. The snake Beetlejuice attacks the family systematically, slithering under Delia's legs as she screams in terror. He pushes Otto down the staircase, grabs Charles by the ankle, and dangles him from the second story. As the snake approaches a horrified Lydia, jaws widening to consume her, Barbara finally intervenes to stop him. None of this had ever been seen in children's movies before to this level. This is a movie all about death, but not in a sad way or even a horrifying way. It's so absurd, so delightfully over-the-top creepy that it revels in it. Level 6. All Dogs Go to Heaven, 1989. Even the title, All Dogs Go to Heaven, pretty much tells you that this one isn't going to be all sunshine and roses. But does anybody actually expect that this movie is going to involve revenge and gambling? I doubt it. Don Bluth's 1989 animated movie follows Charlie, a con artist German shepherd killed by his business partner Carface in a premeditated hit.
Shut up! Shut up! You can't keep a good dog down!
Charlie's death isn't even implied. We see him drunk, then be deliberately run over by a car and his body plunging lifeless into water. The film doesn't stop there. Charlie arrives in heaven, but immediately rebels, stealing a magical watch to return to Earth and maybe get his vengeance. But the angel warns him explicitly he can never return to heaven. When he dies again, he's going straight to hell. Well, children watching got more than they bargained for midway through the film when Charlie experiences a nightmare about his ultimate fate. Before we get into the sequence, remember that this movie was G-rated. The scene shows Charlie falling through darkness as a disembodied voice repeats, "You can never come back." Suddenly, a whirlwind pulls Charlie into a sea of molten lava where demonic creatures emerge. A skeletal boatman ferries Charlie through the inferno while lunging at him with terrifying movements. But all of this is just a teaser for the real terror. A massive demon rises from the flames, breathing fire while smaller imps torment Charlie. Studio executives were uncomfortable enough to cut portions of the sequence, though that only reduced the fear factor from 12 to 11. The full uncut version reveals even more disturbing imagery that didn't make the final cut, and honestly, it's probably a good thing it never did. All this was in the movie alongside gambling, drinking, smoking, kidnapping, and organized crime, and marketed as family entertainment. In fact, the film competed directly with The Little Mermaid on its release day, offering parents a choice between Pretty Mermaids or nightmares about literal hellfire and damnation. Easy choice. Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, 1968. Chitty Chitty Bang Bang is one of those quirky 1960s British family movies that just feels familiar and whimsical and cute. It's just a fun adventure about a flying car who takes its friends to Bulgaria, a country where children are banned by law.
You have never heard of Baron Bombast, ruler of Bulgaria? The most evil man in the world.
Yeah, it's something. This abrupt tonal shift introduces one of cinema's most disturbing villains, the child catcher. Now, the character does not appear in Ian Fleming's original book. For some unknown reason, the filmmakers decided to invent this weirdo specifically for the movie. The child catcher represents a realistic predator hiding behind a friendly facade.
They are here somewhere. I can feel it in my bones. There are children here somewhere.
What makes the child catcher truly disturbing is how he embodies real-world dangers. He lures children with candy and ice cream before revealing his true nature, like a real would. His wagon quickly transforms from an ice cream cart into a prison cell with barred windows. His long nose that smells children, and his net contraption designed specifically for capturing kids.
This nose of mine has never failed me. If there are children here, my friend, you will die.
Well, he's just creepy through and through. We can leave it there. Honestly, the child catcher represents the ultimate stranger danger in a children's film. When he peers through the window upside down, or when he suddenly drops his friendly demeanor and reveals his cage, the film crosses from fantasy into straight-up horror. There's literally no reason for him to even be in this cheerful, whimsical movie, but his presence is extremely jarring and terrifying because of the contrast. We haven't even touched on Bulgaria, a seemingly normal town where people scramble to hide at the sound of approaching horns, where harboring children is punishable by death, and where toys are made only for a childish baron while actual children are hunted and imprisoned.
Take them away to the tower!
Basically, it's all just very, very grim when you look beyond the flying car. Level 7. Return to Oz, 1985. Return to Oz stands as one of Disney's most disturbing children's films, offering a major departure from the musical cheerfulness of its source material. This sequence begins not with singing munchkins, but with Dorothy being taken to a psychiatric hospital for electroshock therapy to cure her fantasies about Oz.
I'm taking her to Cottonwood Falls tomorrow, see if she can be helped. All she ever talks about is some place that just doesn't exist.
Yeah, we're not in Kansas anymore. When Dorothy returns to Oz, she finds a post-apocalyptic wasteland where the yellow brick road lies in ruins and her friends have been turned to stone.
Not moving very fast, are they?
They've all been turned to stone.
Oh, let's wait. I see a bunch of stiffs.
Then she discovers the Wheelers, terrifying creatures with wheels instead of hands and feet, who screech maniacally as they pursue Dorothy through the devastated Emerald City.
You have to come out sooner or later, and when you do, we'll tear you into little pieces.
At some point, Dorothy is captured by Princess Mombi, a witch who collects the heads of beautiful women. Dorothy watches in horror as Mombi calmly removes her own head before selecting another from a glass cabinet containing dozens of disembodied heads. Each head is alive, with eyes that follow Dorothy as she moves through the room. When Dorothy attempts to escape later in the movie, she sneaks into the head room to steal the powder of life, but she can't. The heads awaken and begin screaming, alerting the headless Mombi, who pursues Dorothy through the castle.
Mommy's awake!
Oh no!
There's nothing creepier in this movie than the visual of the decapitated witch chasing Dorothy while her collection of severed heads scream in helpless terror. Obviously, the movie was a massive commercial failure, but its commitment to unnecessary, unrelenting darkness has secured its place as a cult classic that captured the true spirit of Baum's original, much darker Oz books. It's definitely not a feel-good story, but it's not like anything else. Something Wicked This Way Comes, 1983. In 1983, Disney released Something Wicked This Way Comes, based on Ray Bradbury's novel. The story follows two boys facing a sinister carnival led by the tattooed Mr. Dark. Obviously, the carnival has some unsettling secrets. The carousel sequence has to be one of the highlights of the movie. When operated in reverse, this carnival ride transforms Mr. Cougar into a child, albeit one with unnaturally old eyes.
It's late. Time to go about your work, Mr. Cougar.
But it's just a warm-up for the film's most horrifying scene, the end of Mr. Dark. The boys find Mr. Dark attempting to use the carousel with his latest victim as part of his evil plot, but they manage to rescue the innocent victim just as lightning strikes the ride. Suddenly, Mr. Dark starts to age and decay rapidly, the entire carnival being sucked into a giant twister. Now, these are the two most haunting scenes, but the movie just keeps digging deeper to get more and more creepiness going on. Behind the scenes, it was a whole other level of horror. The spider attack sequence used 200 real tarantulas, some seemingly thrown directly at the child actors.
This way.
The boys cower in terror as spiders crawl over their bodies and faces, and all of it was 100% real and unsimulated. Even Disney's attempt to make the film more kid-friendly with reshoots resulted in adding more disturbing content, including Will seeing his own severed head fall from a guillotine. There seemed to be nothing they could do. It was destined to be a true horror movie. If you're still in the mood for more TV and film icebergs, why not check out this video on Game of Thrones?